这样，去调起来，遥控器。
这个应该是可以的，就现在这样就。
Okay, hello everyone, welcome back. In the next session, we will have a lecture on the Chinese efforts against the COVID-19, shared to us by Dr. Xu Gong. First of all, let me give a very brief introduction to Dr. Xu Gong. Dr. Xu Gong is from Xiyuan Hospital of China Academy of Chinese Medical Sciences. He's an executive director of the Chinese Medicine Culture Professional Committee of the World Federation of Chinese Medicine Societies, and a member of the International Exchange and Technical Communication Committee of Beijing Integrated Medicine Society.
Well, Dr. Xu, please start.
Right. All right.
Sorry,
I cannot hear from the host, so I don't know whether it has finished introduction by myself. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's my turn. And firstly, good afternoon to all the friends online, and thanks for the opportunity given by the organizer of the seminars to give me a chance to have a talk and communicate with all the friends online. And today, I'd like to share some information about COVID-19. And please allow me first to share my screens with all of you. And from the screens, we will see that today I will take a topic. The topic is so frequently and so familiar with all the friends online because we have stayed with this topic for at least 2 or 3 years. And the COVID-19 at the topic today perhaps will be a little part of the question to all of you. And before my formal presentation, I'd like to discuss 2 issues with all of you. If we cannot make a consensus on this kind of 2 issues, the following 2 hours will be a little boring to all the friends online because, as I know that not all of you or not all of us are majoring in medicine, but actually speaking, the COVID-19 is a special kind of disease. It's a topic of the medicine field. So we should talk about 2 issues in advance to make a consensus, to make sure that the following 2 hours will be meaningful and helpful to all the friends online. And the first question is that whether it is necessary for us to spend 2 hours to take the top COVID-19 as a topic again, since we have stayed with the pandemic for at least 2 or 3 years. Why I ask this question? Just because, according to some foreign friends, self-experience, they just believe that the COVID-19, after 2 years development, have just become a special influenza. And why they have this kind of feeling about COVID-19? Because they can see many patients around us. Most of them are the mild and moderate cases, and the large part of them are asymptomatic, and they can be cured in a short time, perhaps less than 10 days or less than 7 days. And the symptoms the patient's health is not as serious as the condition at the beginning of 2020. So many friends just think that the COVID-19 has become a special influenza. It is not necessary for us to spend 2 hours today to talk about this topic of COVID-19. But from my clinical experience and my knowledge, I believe that COVID-19 is not a special influenza. At least we can see many sequelae on clinic. What is sequelae? Sequelae is the symptoms that still exist in the patient's body, even they were discharged from the hospital. Of course, in my following slides, I will share more evidence to prove my opinion. And it is the first issues I'd like to discuss with you, that the COVID-19 is not a special influenza. So we need to spend at least 2 hours today to talk about this topic of COVID-19. The second issues I'd like to discuss with you before my formal presentation is that from this first slide and from the introduction about myself from the host, we will see that I'm from the hospital. I work in a hospital. And for someone who are working in the hospital, what is the topic they most like to talk about? And for the medical staffs in the hospital, they mostly like to talk about the treatment for any kind of disease based on the different measures. For example, what kind of drugs we use on clinic, and what's the therapies we use to treat some disease, and what is the pathways of the treatment, what is standard the SOPs, and something like this. And considering on the background of all the participants online, you are not majoring in medicine. Why should you spend 2 hours with me together to learn some detailed information on clinic, especially how we treat this kind of disease? To answer this question, we should trace back to the beginning of 2020. At that time, I believe most of us are the first time, or all of us are the first time to face and fight against this kind of disease. And I believe that at that time, most of us have a feeling of scaring. We should know why we are scared about something, just because it's the unknown things for us. And if we can spend 2 hours together today, and I shared more detailed information on clinic. The aim of my presentation is not ask all of you to recite the detailed information in my slides, but to have a feeling that after 2 years development, and we stay with this pandemic and fight against the pandemic for 2 years, and we have found some way to prevent, and we have found some way to cure and treat this kind of disease. That will help us to set up the solid confidence in fighting against COVID-19. And why did we need this kind of confidence in fighting against COVID-19? Just because it is not easy for us to see the end of the COVID-19 epidemic in a short time. And of course, in the following slides, I will share my reason why I think it's not easy for us to say goodbye to the pandemic of COVID-19 in a short time. And since this is the phenomenon that happened in our life, but we need to go back to our common life and restart our work and construction. So we need this kind of confidence. So if I share the detailed clinical information and help us to set up this kind of confidence, that will be meaningful for all of us. So this is 2 issues I'd like to discuss with you before my formal presentation. And since we can make a consensus on these 2 issues, the 2 following hours will be meaningful and helpful to all the friends online. All right, today I'd like to talk about the Chinese contribution to international cooperation in fighting against COVID-19. And just now, the host have introduced some information about myself, and please allow me to spend a little time to talk about my hospital to all of you. And I work in a hospital named Xiyuan. It was located in the capital of China, Beijing City. It was founded in 1955, and it is a large integrated triple-level great traditional Chinese medicine hospital. In my slides here, today I often use abbreviation of TCM, referring to traditional Chinese medicine. In China, we divided the hospital into 3 levels, similar to the healthcare system in many other different countries. And we divided the hospital based on the amount of the beds that the hospital have. So if the hospital have the beds less than 100, so it's the primary hospital and the first level hospital. And if the hospital have the beds from 100 to 500, firstly, they are the second level hospital, and most of them are the specialist hospital. And if the hospital have the beds above 500, so it is the triple level hospital, and most of them are the general hospital. So Xuyuan Hospital have the beds more than 800. So firstly, we are a general hospital and the triple level hospital, and at the same time, we are featured with traditional Chinese medicine. And we offer the medical services, scientific research services, education services, and the healthcare services for the domestic and international patients. And since the establishment of Xuyuan Hospital, we have played an important role of the exchange window of traditional Chinese medicine with the world. And nowadays, we are one of the traditional medicine cooperation centers of the World Health Organization. And during the history of Xuyuan Hospital, we have received many visits and exchanges from more than 1,000 groups from nearly 100 countries and regions around the world. And nowadays, we have become important platforms and the base of international cooperation of the Ministry of Science and Technology of China, and the Ministry of Commerce of China, and the Ministry of Health of China, and etc. So in the history of Xuyuan Hospital, we have set up the solid collaboration relationship with many famous universities, colleges, clinics, hospitals, and institutes. And we just focus on the bottleneck problem of the medicine development. And we have obtained numerous significant achievements during the history of Xuyuan Hospital. All right, after the brief introduction about myself and my hospital, and I'd like to formally come to my slides. And today my presentation will contain 3 sessions. And in the first topic, I'd like to share some information about China's contribution to the development of the Belt and Road countries, especially through the Chinese medical aid to the other countries. Of course, during my presentation, if you have any question, feel free to type in the chat box, and I will reply to your questions as soon as possible after my presentation. As we know that the healthcare system is essential to the development and the construction of each country, because the construction of a healthcare system have the huge influence on the human being's life in each country. And the Chinese government sponsor to the development and the construction of the healthcare systems in many developing countries through sending the Chinese medical team abroad. And when did this work started? And this work started in the year of 1963. The first Chinese medical team came to Algeria. So since that year of 1963, the Chinese medical teams have reached 65 countries and regions during the past more than 60 years. And during the history of more than 60 years, a total of nearly 20,000 medical personnel has been dispatched to many developing countries. And we have treated totally about 300 million patients in different regions and countries, and when time came to 2020, there is a new disease appearing in our life and cause epidemic that have the effect of our world during the past 2 years. And I believe that all of us know the name of this epidemic, that is the COVID-19. And since the outbreaking of COVID-19 epidemic, many international exchange has been stopped by this kind of epidemic, because it is not sending abroad. And since the outbreaking of COVID-19 epidemic, more than 10 batches of expert groups of medical teams have been sent overseas to fight against COVID-19. And from the opening ceremony, and I heard that there is a participant from Cambodia to give a speech on the opening ceremony, and it's a great honor that to say that I compare with the colleagues from the host of the organizer of the seminars, I am more closer to all the friends online compared to my Chinese colleagues, because now I'm staying in the Southeast Asian country named Cambodia. And since the January 2022, I got a medical team from China to come to this country to offer the medical services here. And we have been here for half a year, and we will continue to offer the medical services for more than 1 year. And in the following slides, I will share more detailed information about my teams and our works in Cambodia. And when we review the efforts that Xi'an Hospital have made during the past 2 years, especially in the field of the fighting against COVID-19, and we found that we really did a lot of works. And among these works, I'd like to emphasize on two first and to introduce to all the friends online. When the outbreaking of the COVID-19 first occurred in the city named Wuhan in Hubei province in China, and under the guidance of the Ministry of Health of China, the Chinese government organized many medical teams and medical staffs from other provinces and cities to come to Wuhan for medical aid. And the first national level traditional Chinese medicine medical team was sent by Xi'an Hospital to Wuhan City for medical aid. And it is time of the January 2020. And since time came to March or April 2020, many other countries started to face the first wave or the second wave of the pandemic of COVID-19. And China sponsored and donated many medical resources to the other countries to help them in fighting against COVID-19. And besides that, the sending the human resources abroad is also an important task in a way from China to help the other countries. And the first national level traditional Chinese medical team were also sent by Xi'an Hospital to foreign countries. And at the beginning of 2020, the Chinese government, of course, including all the medical staffs in China, realized that if we want to solve the problem of COVID-19, the whole world should work in together. So the Chinese government shared the data and the research with the World Health Organization since the beginning of 2020. And the aim of this work is to promote international cooperation in fighting against COVID-19. And under this aim, Xi'an Hospital have conducted many international academic exchanges and organized many forums, conference meetings in the topic of COVID-19. And besides that, we also held many training courses online and on-site to share the Chinese experience in preventing and treat this kind of new disease and a new pandemic. And as we know that the COVID-19 has affected the world during the past 2 years, and we can talk about this topic on the level of the confirmed cases. And this is the statistics from the Johns Hopkins. It's a very famous university in the US. And from this data, we can see that until 4 months ago, it's almost 5 months ago. It's in April 2020, the totally confirmed cases in the world have reached to 490 million confirmed cases, and this number just increasing rapidly during the following time. And from this map, we can see where is the places which is suffering from the most serious condition of the COVID-19 epidemic. And the red zones reflect those kind of areas. And the areas are as followed: the east part of Asia, the south part of Asia, and the west part of Europe, and the most part of the US, and some part of the South America. And in front of this kind of epidemic called COVID-19, the whole world make a conscious that the vaccine is the most important, one of the most important weapons for human beings to fight against COVID-19. However, when we review the invention history of vaccines, we will find that this kind of history is no longer than 300 or 400 years. However, compared with the ancient time, during the 300 or 400 years since the human beings have invented vaccines, we promote the capability in treating many kinds of infectious disease. And since we have this kind of causes, and when the outbreaking of COVID-19 occurred in our world, the whole world can concentrate all the research resources on the field of the R&D of the vaccines of COVID-19. And that's the reason that we can invent this kind of vaccines in such a short time. And we continued to promote the coverage of application of vaccines of COVID-19 in the world. And still the same data, we can see that until 4 months ago, and we can see that the populations who have been vaccinated have reached to 4 billion. And we need to continue to promote this kind of coverage. But these are the top 10 countries that which have the highest rate of the population who are fully vaccinated or have the larger scale of population who have fully vaccinated. In this slide, we can see a phrase named fully vaccinated. I've explained the meaning to all of you, because most brands of the vaccines are designed as a 2 doses type. So here the fully vaccinated means somebody who have at least 2 doses of the injections of COVID-19 vaccines. And from the top 10 countries, we can see a phenomenon that if the country is suffering from the most serious condition of COVID-19 epidemic in the early stage of this pandemic, and after that, in this country, we can see the rapid speed of the injection of the COVID-19 vaccines for the whole population, or we can see the larger scale about the populations who have the fully vaccinated in different countries. And however, among them, there is a unique one, named Cambodia, where I'm working now. Compared with the other countries, actually speaking, the Cambodia is not suffering from the most serious condition of the COVID-19 because even there is a new report of confirmed cases in the recently 3 or 4 months, but the rate of the severe and critical type is less than the other countries, and the amount of the confirmed cases is also less than the other countries. Since this country is not suffering from the most serious condition of COVID-19 epidemic, in last year, this country started a national program to promote the coverage of application for the whole population in the world, in this country. And I just remember it's just in the first half year of 2022, the Ministry of Health of Cambodia announced that more than 95% of the populations have been fully vaccinated in this country. And I should say that the Chinese government gave us strong support to this kind of the national programs, and we have donated many doses of vaccines of COVID-19 to Cambodia to help them in fighting against COVID-19. And we should know that the vaccines were manufactured in the 5 or 6 countries in the world. For example, the US, the UK, Germany, Russia, China, India, and some other countries. And however, the whole world need this kind of vaccines of COVID-19. So Chinese government donated many doses of the vaccines to the developing countries to help them fight against COVID-19. And in this picture, we can see that those are the many doses of the vaccines of COVID-19 from the China brand Sinopharm, waiting to be delivered to the developing countries by airplanes. And sorry, do you have any question? If you have any kind of question, feel free to type in the chat box. Otherwise, please mute your microphone. Thank you. And just now I have introduced that the vaccines were manufactured in the 5 or 6 countries. However, the whole world need this kind of vaccines. So there is a difficult task for many developing countries to conduct, which is the long distance delivery of this kind of vaccines. Why I say it is a difficult task for the developing countries? If you have the self-experience of the injection of COVID-19 vaccines, you will find a phenomenon that the vaccines of COVID-19 were kept in a special box. And why did this kind of vaccines should be kept in a special box? Because the vaccines of COVID-19 have strictly requirements for the stable environment and a stable range of the temperature to keep in activity. So most brands of the vaccines of COVID-19 should be kept under the temperature range from the 2 degrees centigrade to 8 degrees centigrade. Otherwise, it will lose the activity. So if we need to conduct the long distance delivery of the vaccines, at least we should transfer from the truck to airplane in the country which manufacture this kind of vaccines. And then these vaccines will be delivered by airplane from one country to another country or even to another continent. And when the planes land down, it will transfer to truck again to the destination where the patients, not patients, where the people and the persons need to be injected. So it is a difficult task to developing countries to provide the stable environment for the vaccines of COVID-19. And to solve this problem, China started another important program to collaborate with many vaccine pharmacy factories, local factories in different countries to produce the China brand's vaccines. And this kind of collaboration production has been launched in the UAE, Indonesia, Malaysia, Egypt, Brazil, Tokyo, Pakistan, Mexico, Myanmar, and many other countries. and an annual production of capacity of more than 1 billion doses have been initially formed. And this program just shortened the distance between the countries, between the factories and the customs, and that will be easy for different countries to conduct the delivery of this kind of vaccines. And I believe that it will benefit more populations and more countries in the among the Belt and Road countries. All right, in the first topic, I shared some information about the Chinese contribution to the development of the Belt and Road countries through the Chinese medical aid. And in the second topic, I'd like to continue to review the process of the Chinese medical aid to the other countries. Because when we review the process, we will find that traditional Chinese medicine played an important role of this kind of task and the works that we have done during the past more than 60 years. And I believe that the traditional Chinese medicine at total is an important gift from China to the world. So in 2015, there is a female researcher named Tu Youyou in China won the Nobel Prize. And the Nobel Prize in 2015 just rewarded to the achievement on the research on artemisinin. Before the invention of artemisinin, there is a kind of disease named malarium, killed 100,000 patients' life in the African continent and the Asian continent. And there is an ancient book named Zhou Hou Bei Ji Fang in China. It is a handbook of the emergency knowledge of China, written in the East Jing dynasty with the history more than 1,500 years. And in this ancient books, there is a literary record told us that artemisinin can kill malarium. So just based on this ancient literature record, Professor Tu Youyou guided her research team, continued to do the research on artemisinin, and finally, after 40 years, they have invented a production of traditional Chinese medicine named artemisinin. And since the invention of artemisinin, it saved 100,000 patients' life every year. And the 2015 Nobel Prize just referred to the achievement on artemisinin. In the celebration of 2015 Nobel Prize, and Professor Tu Youyou gave a speech topic as artemisinin is a gift from traditional Chinese medicine to the world. And we should know that artemisinin is one of the most important representative of traditional Chinese medicine. So we believe that traditional Chinese medicine as a total is an important gift from China to the world. All right, some question? Who just turned on the microphone? 主持人老师帮我静一下音吧，有一个学员的麦克风，哎，好了，谢谢啊。Thank you for the host to mute the microphone from the past participants. All right, let's go back to the topic of COVID-19, which first occurred at the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020, with the history more than about 2 or 3 years. And however, when we evaluate this kind of epidemics, we cannot only focus on the duration of 2 or 3 years, and we should compare this kind of epidemic of COVID-19 with the whole human being's life, human being's history. Because when we review the whole human being's history, we will find that during the history of human beings, when the society wants to develop, it will meet 3 main risks. The first one is the epidemics caused by the infectious disease. The second one is natural disaster. The third one is war. And among these 3 main risks, we should know that the influence of epidemics caused by the infectious diseases is more serious than the other 2 main risks. And today, we just want to introduce the condition of China, so I will not share more detailed information about the epidemic's history or the epidemic event in the other countries or other continents. We just want to have a look what happened in the history of China. In this slide, I prepare a tablet to do a statistic of the outbreaking of the epidemic based on the different dynasties. And when we accumulate all the numbers totally, we will find that in the history of China, at least we have fought against epidemics for 352 times. And since we have so frequently fight against epidemics, and after each time, we should again got many useful information on clinic by the scientists, physicians, or doctors. And where this knowledge and experience were kept or collected in the history of China, those kind of experience and the knowledge were kept in the traditional Chinese medicine classics. In the right side of this slide, I prepared two pictures which were full of the Chinese characters. And perhaps not all of us can recognize the meaning of these Chinese characters. However, you can realize that they are two ancient books of China. Yes, they are two ancient Chinese books. The upper one was written in the 200 AD with the history of more than 200 years. The another one was written in the Qing dynasty with the history of more than 100 years. And these two books are the important representative of traditional Chinese medicine classics. And from the following slides of my presentation today, you will find a phenomenon that even those kind of classics of traditional Chinese medicine have the history more than 100 years or 1,000 years. On the currently clinic of traditional Chinese medicine, we still follow the experience of in these ancient classics, and we continued to promote the efficiency of this kind of knowledge in these ancient books times and times. And nowadays, when we're talking about COVID-19, most friends likely to use the Delta or Omicron instead of the name of COVID-19. But actually speaking, no matter it's the Omicron, Delta, or COVID-19, they are the same. They are the seventh coronavirus that the human beings have found in the history. And most friends are likely to ask a question: when can we see the end of the epidemic? At the beginning of my presentation, I share my view that it's not easy for us to see the end of the epidemic in a short time. And now I will explain why I believe that it's not easy for us to say goodbye to the pandemic in a short time. And in this slide, I will show my reason. If we want to see the end of the epidemic, or we just want to cancel this kind of epidemic, we should solve two problems in advance. The first one is that, can we stop the mutation of the COVID-19 virus? Second one is, can we make sure that one patient could be infected for one time during the period of one kind of variation? All right, let's talk about the second problem. Firstly, in clinic, most physicians agree that if the patients be infected by one kind of variation of COVID-19, it's not easy for him or her to be infected again by the same kind of variation. So it seems that we have solved the second problem, but we need to remember there's still another problem we need to solve, and which is can we stop the mutation of the COVID-19? To answer this question, we should know that the virus is divided into two types. The first type is DNA virus, and the second type is RNA virus. If you want to tell the difference between the DNA virus and the RNA virus, that will be an academic topic. But I can share a simple example to all of you to have the easy understand of the difference between DNA virus and RNA virus. Let's imagine there is a classroom in front of us, and the two part of students sitting in the classrooms. And the first part is DNA virus students, and another part is RNA virus student. And those two part of students have the same task, to copy the note from the blackboard the teacher have written down, and we can evaluate the different behaviors that the two part of students will do during the process of the copying. Firstly, let's check what will the DNA virus students do during the process of copying the note from the blackboard. And when the first DNA virus student started to copy, and suddenly he found he made a small mistake. And what will he do? he will correct the mistake and continue to finish the copying. And after that, he will pass the notebook to the second DNA virus students and one by one to the last one, the last DNA virus students. So at that time, if we compare the notebooks between the first DNA virus students and the last DNA virus students, we will find that those two notebooks are almost the same. We should remember there are still another part of students of RNA virus, and let's check what they will do in this process. And when the first RNA virus student started to copy the note, and he also found them. He made a small mistake, and what will he do? He will just let mistake in the notebook and did not correct it. And when he finished the copying, he will just pass the notebook to the second RNA virus students and one by one to the last RNA virus students. So when we compare the notebooks between the first RNA virus students and the last RNA virus students, we will find that the two notebooks are totally different. So from this example, we can see the difference, we can tell the difference between the DNA virus and the RNA virus, which is that whether they have the mechanism to correct the mistake during the process of inheritance. So the DNA virus have this kind of mechanism. So during the inheritance from the generation to the ancient generation, and we will find that he will almost keep the same style, same type, but the RNA virus are lack of this kind of mechanism. So in the common life, we will see that many changes appeared and happened during the process of the inheritance. That is the variation. So that's the reason we can see many mutation of this kind of RNA virus. And the COVID-19 virus is one kind of RNA virus. So the continued mutation has become the most important characteristics of the RNA virus, and is also the characteristics of the COVID-19 virus. So no matter it's the Delta or Omicron, is also the one kind of variation of COVID-19. And the Omicron is one kind of variation that's spreading around the world and almost for 1 year. And actually speaking, from the news, we should know that there are the sub-variation of Omicron have appeared in our world. And for example, the BA4, BA5, and recently we can see that the BF6 just appearing in our life and caused many confirmed cases. And we should know that the continued mutation will be the ones that will have been the characteristics of the COVID-19 virus. So we cannot easily to stop the mutation of this kind of virus. And I believe that more kind of the variations of COVID-19 virus are waiting for us somewhere, someplace, and some time in the world. And that's the reason we say it's not easy to cancel this kind of epidemic in a short time. It's not easy for us to say goodbye to the pandemic in a short time. So we need the confidence in fighting against COVID-19. And that's the reason I'd like to spend 2 hours with all of you together to talk about this topic, since we have stayed with the pandemic for two or 3 years. All right, let's continue to another topic to talk about the important role of traditional Chinese medicine have played in fighting against COVID-19 in China. And firstly, I'd like to share 3 data in the year of 2020. When you heard the year of 2020, you're a bit puzzled because today is 2022. Why should we spend some time and pay much more attention to the situation of 2 years ago? To answer this question, we should trace back to the beginning of 2020 again, because at that time, each country and every country started to fight against COVID-19 to try to treat this kind of new disease, new virus, and a new pandemic. And I believe that none of us have the experience and the knowledge to treat and prevent this kind of epidemics. So each country started to find their own way to fight and prevent this kind of disease and epidemic. And at that time, China decided to use the integration of traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine as a mailing protocol of treatment to confirmed cases. And we decided to use the dynamic clearing policy as the mailing prevention policy to prevent this kind of epidemics. And we almost used the whole year of 2020 to evaluate whether this kind of decisions are suitable were suitable to the condition of the epidemic in China. And finally, we found this decision are suitable for the Chinese situation. So we make this make these decisions become a long-term decision. So firstly, in my slides, I'd like to share what we have done and to introduce what we will do in the future in fighting against COVID-19. Besides that, I'd like to help all of us to have a further understanding why in China we had to make this kind of decisions. All right, let's go back to the year of 2020 to see what happened at the year. And the first data is 91.5%. It described the coverage of application of traditional Chinese medicine in the confirmed cases in China in 2020. And at the end of 2020, more than 91.5% of confirmed cases in China used the traditional Chinese medicine, accounting for 91.5%. And the second data is 90.6%. Sorry, there is a question or not? It's the host to ask friends to ask the questions. Okay. And the second data is 90.6%. It's talk about the situation in Hubei province. Because at the first half year of 2020, Hubei province is suffering from the most serious condition of the pandemic. And we believe that at that time is the most serious and the most worst time in fighting against COVID-19 history. And then later I will explain why I think this kind of period is the most worst time for China to fight against COVID-19. And among them, more than 60,000 people in Hubei province use the traditional Chinese medicine, accounting for 90.6%. And the last data is 90%. It tells us the result of the treatment of traditional Chinese medicine, and the observation of clinical efficiency showed that the total effective rate of traditional Chinese medicine is over 90%. So these three data just describe the important role of traditional Chinese medicine have played in fighting against COVID-19 in China. And now I'd like to change another perspective to talk about this topic again. And firstly, we should know that there's a concept of the disease and the illness existing in our world, in our life. And this kind of concept have the closely relationship with the human being's life. Just because since we have got this kind of concept of the disease or illness, when we evaluate the whole human being's life, we can not only focus on the length of the level of the length, but also could change the whole human's life into three conditions. And the first condition is before illness. The second condition is suffering from the illness. And the third condition is when the disease has been cured. And referring to medicine, the three conditions is referred to the three processes of prevention, treatment, and the rehabilitation. When we review the COVID-19 situation and the condition in the past 2 years, we will find that traditional Chinese medicine have run through the whole process of prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation of COVID-19 in the past 2 years. And I will introduce the process independently to all of you. Firstly, let's talk about the process of the prevention. When we talk about this topic, we should trace back to the beginning of 2020. Again, at that time, the medical team from Xinyuan Hospital have arrived at Wuhan. And when we arrived at Wuhan, we found that there is an emergency problem that need to be solved as soon as possible, which is that for many citizens who are isolated at home, have appeared many symptoms. For example, the cough, the throat pains, and the diarrhea, something like this, or fatigue. And they are likely to go to the hospital to be confirmed or to be eliminated. However, the local hospital at that time were full of the patients. So they cannot offer the rapid test to the patients and of course cannot show the result to them. So there is an emotion of panic spreading among the communities. To solve this problem, our medical team decided to widely use the traditional Chinese herbal medicine decoction. And when we delivered this kind of TCM decoction to the citizens who have the symptoms, and those their symptoms just released in a short time, and to help the citizens to stay at home peacefully and obey to the prevention policy by the local government, and which helped the Wuhan city to calm down in a short time. All right, the second process is the treatment. When we talk about the treatment for the confirmed cases, we should know that the subject is the confirmed cases. And on clinic, we decided, we just separate the confirmed cases and divided confirmed cases into detailed types. However, for most of us, we can simply divide them into two types. The first one is somebody who did not have the severe and the critical symptoms. So we call it mild and moderate cases. And the second type is someone who had a severe and critical type and almost come to die. So the aim of the treatment for those kind of patients are obviously, we just want to treat the mild and moderate cases to avoid the conversion to severe. And we also want to treat the severe and critical type of patients to avoid death, to reduce the mortality rate. And in Wuhan city, we make a compared research. We just use the traditional Chinese herbal decoction for intervention for one part of the patients who are admitted in the Wuhan integration of traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine hospital. And then we were found the result show that the risk of death in the group taking Chinese herbal medicines decoctions just decreased by 87.7%. All right, the last process is the rehabilitation. And when we talk about the rehabilitation period, we should find the difference between China and the other countries. And as we know that in many countries, if you are diagnosed by the COVID-19, and if you have not, and since you can be discharged from the hospital, you can go back home or just go back to your office to restart your work directly. However, in China, if you are diagnosed by the COVID-19 and even you can be discharged from the hospital, you should continue to get a short-term rehabilitation therapy. The reason of this work is, firstly, is to release the symptoms that still exist in the patient's body. And the second is to check whether they will show the real positive to the PCR test. And for the first batch of the patients, who are discharged from the hospital and came to the rehabilitation center in Wuhan city at the beginning of 2020, we did a compared group research. We separated them into two groups. The group A used the standard Western medicine rehabilitation therapy, and the second group just the group B, just group A plus the traditional Chinese medicine for intervention. And from the result, we can say that the repositive rate of the traditional Chinese medicine intervention group was lower to 2.77%. But while the another group was higher to 15.79%. And since we have this kind of data, and we just make a decision that for the following rehabilitation patients, we offer the traditional Chinese medicine for intervention for the rehabilitation patients, which just reduce the repositive rate of the rehabilitation patients in the following times. All right, we will continue to another topic to introduce the treatment for the patients. At the beginning, I have introduced that the reason why we need to introduce some treatment information to all of you, since you are not majoring in medicine. The aim is not ask all of you to recite the detailed information about these slides. And if you just confirmed by the COVID-19, it's better to follow the guidance and listen to the suggestion for the doctors around you. But here I'd like to introduce some information just to help us to fight against the scaring about this kind of disease, and that will help us to set up a solid confidence in fighting against COVID-19. And firstly, I'd like to introduce the treatment for the severe and critical type patients. And most friends were part of that. Nowadays, we can see real rate of the severe and critical types. Why should we spend enough much attention to those kind of patients treatment? And when we review the history of the epidemic, we'll find some similar phenomenon happening in the history. There is an epidemic named the Spanish flu, occurred in the year of 1921. At that year, this epidemic of Spanish flu just have influence on 30 million population in the European continent. And this epidemic have 3 periods for development. The first period is the severe and critical type. It's almost like to the situation in 2020, especially the first half year of 2020. And in the history, we can see that the Spanish flu developed the second period, which is the mild and moderate type. It's almost similar to the current situation of COVID-19. However, in the history, we should know that this Spanish flu epidemic developed to the third period, which is the go back to the similar condition of the first period, which is the severe and critical type. So we have seen this kind of historical event, and we don't want to see the history happen again. And we are not willing to see many patients, especially the severe and critical type, because if the rate of the severe and critical type is increased, it means that we should face to more larger scale about the death, because this still have a rate of the mortality. So we don't want to see the history happen again. We have to have a fully preparation for the first third stage that will be perhaps happened in the future. So for those kind of patients, severe and critical types, we use the integration of traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine as a treatment and a protocol to those kind of patients. And firstly, we will often offer the oxygen therapy for the patients. Firstly, we should know that the COVID-19 vaccines affect an important organ in our body named the lung. And the lung have the function for the oxygen exchanging inside and outside our body. So if the function of the lung have been affected, and the oxygen level in our body will be low. If it is lower than 70%, we are going to die. So if you have this self-experience of the treatment in your country of COVID-19, or just see the videos and the screens from the TV news, and we will find that the doctors will often offer the oxygen mask, the breathing machine, or the ECMO to help the patients to let the oxygen level to rise or above 95%. And on clinic, we can also meet some patients who are the senior and the weakly patients. And we will also offer the nutrition support or liquid support to all our patients. So that is the treatment I have introduced, I have written in these slides. And after read this information or listen to my introduction, you'll have one feeling, which is that those kind of treatments are similar to the treatment in your country for COVID-19 confirmed cases, especially for the severe and critical type. And firstly, I'd like to say that your feeling is correct, because those kind of treatment are the recommended, are the standard treatment for the confirmed cases, especially the severe and critical type, recommended by the World Health Organization. But there is a new question is following, which is that since the whole world are following the same standard treatment, it means that we almost use the same process and the same material and the same pathways. And why the treatment result for severe and critical type in China, for example, the mortality rate, the duration of hospital stay, and the promotion of the symptoms, the conversion time for those kind of figures are better than the other countries. The reason is that combined with the oxygen therapy I've introduced in the last slides, we often use the traditional Chinese medicine intravenous jointly on clinic. And we will choose the suitable intravenous of traditional Chinese medicine just based on the different symptoms the patients have appeared. If the patients have the symptoms of fever, we will check whether it is the high fever or low fever. We will check whether the patients have the dry cough, or the patients have the digestive system symptoms, for example, the diarrhea. And we will also check the color of the exploration or the condition of the consciousness. So based on the different symptoms, we will just choose the suitable intravenous of traditional Chinese medicine. All right. And to be jointly used to treat those kind of patients. And also we will meet some typical pneumonia patients diagnosed by the CT scans, or we will meet some senior weak or elderly patients. We also have the suitable intravenous of traditional Chinese medicine to be used to treat those kind of patients. And this is some information about the traditional Chinese medicine intravenous I've introduced to all of you. And I have listed the name, the picture, the function, and the pharmacological actions of this kind of intravenous. And considering the background of all the participants online, I will not introduce detailed information here, and just left to somebody who have the self-interest to review this information by themselves. One thing I'd like to emphasize on and to tell all of you is that the intravenous of traditional Chinese medicine today I have introduced here are totally registered as drug in China. It's different from the production of traditional medicine in many other countries. As we know that many production of traditional medicine in other countries are registered as nutrition or food. It means that any health or sub-health person want to use the production of traditional medicine could go to the market, shop, supermall, pharmacies, and some places like this to buy this kind of production, and decided to use these productions based on their individual decision. However, in China, those kind of intravenous are registered as drugs. If the production, no matter coming from the Western medicine or the traditional Chinese medicine, want to be registered as a drug, at least it should finish 2 steps. The first step was conducted in the laboratory to use the physical and the chemistry way to explain the mechanism of the productions. And after that, he will continue to conduct the clinical trials on the human beings. He should perform the phase 1 to phase 4 clinical trials, and to check and evaluate the efficiency and the safety of the production. And after these 2 steps, this kind of production could be registered as a drug and the production, legal production to be used on clinic according to the prescription of the doctors. So since we have introduced the difference between the traditional Chinese medicine production, especially for the intravenous I've introduced here, and the production of traditional medicine in other countries, that we can have the solid confidence in the efficiency and the safety of this kind of intravenous of traditional Chinese medicine to be used on clinic. From these pictures, we can see that the intravenous I've introduced to all of you is the liquid kept in the special box, special bottles. And just now we have introduced some information about the clinic of the treatment for the severe and critical type. And could we have a 10 minutes break? And after that, we continue to introduce some of the treatment for another part of the patients. All right, thank you. All right, it's time to have a 10 minutes break. Hello, everyone. And can we continue to the second session about my presentation? And in the first sections, I say that there is a question from from the participants, and I will reply to your questions and after my presentation. Okay. And just now in the last sessions, I stopped here to talk about the treatment for the severe and critical type. Actually speaking, nowadays, and the rate of the severe and critical type is rare, and we can see less confirmed cases are the severe and critical types. But actually speaking, on the current situation, we can see more and more patients are the mild and moderate cases, and among them, the asymptomatic took a large charge of the a large part of this kind of confirmed cases. And for those kind of patients, we should find another to treat to find a suitable way to treat those kind of patients. And when we talk about this topic, we will see the difference also between China and many other countries. In many other countries, if you are diagnosed as the mild and moderate cases or the asymptomatic, and if the symptoms not serious, most time you will be suggested to stay at home to check whether the symptoms will conversion to severe, and at the same time, and perhaps there was no drugs for intervention to be given to you, and same time, but in China, if no matter which type of cases you are diagnosed, you will be admitted to the hospital, perhaps the mobile coming hospital, the field hospital, specialist hospital, diagnosis, the designated hospital, or the general hospital. And at the same time, we will offer the medicines for intervention to the patients. Since and the aim of this work just to shorten the distance from the positive to negative, and this is the difference between China and many other countries. And in China, we mainly use the traditional Chinese medicine to treat the asymptomatic, mild, and moderate cases. And when you heard about that, you're worried about them. One thing I believe that you have mentioned that those cases are the confirmed cases, are confirmed patients, and since they even they have the mild and moderate symptoms, they are also the confirmed cases, and you only use the pure traditional medicine way to treat this kind of patients. It is responsible or safety for those kind of patients. And to answer this question, we should spend a little time to explain one term, the integration of traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine, to help all of us to further understand why in China we can make this kind of clinical decision. In many countries, we can see the phenomena of the collaboration between traditional medicine and the Western medicine. And for example, there is a hospital with two departments. The one part is the traditional Chinese, one department is the Western medicine, and another part is the traditional medicine. And when one patient came to the hospital and needed to get the treatment from two kind of medicines, the doctors and the physicians from the two departments can offer the medical services on the same patients at the same time. So this is the phenomenon of the collaboration between traditional medicine and the Western medicine that we often see in many different countries, in many countries. However, in China, we just promote this kind of collaboration between traditional medicine and the Western medicine a further step. We integrate the traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine in one physician. In China, if someone wants to be a doctor or physician of traditional Chinese medicine, firstly, he or she should finish the higher education period. And no matter the bachelor degree or the master degree or the doctor degree candidate, and when he's on campus, he should spend enough time on both Western medicine and the traditional Chinese medicine. And when he graduates, he have to fully understand of traditional China, have to fully understand of two kinds of medicines. And after that, he will continue to have a work on clinic or hospital. And during this period occupation period, and he should follow the laws and regulations of the doctors in China. In this kind of laws and regulations, the traditional Chinese medicine physician have the equal legal position with the Western medicine doctors, especially in the prescription rights. So based on these two issues I will introduce to all of you, we can imagine there is this kind of phenomenon that the traditional Chinese medicine doctors started to treat confirmed cases. And firstly, he could answer an academic question between the Western medicine therapy and the traditional Chinese medicine therapy, which one is more suitable for the currently situation of patients. And secondly, these doctors of traditional Chinese medicine have the legal prescription right to give this clinical suggestion to the patients. Of course, we know it is. So based on the two conditions, we can say that why in China we can make this kind of clinical decision. And the traditional Chinese medicine treatment for the patients could be summarized as the three formulas and the three Chinese patent medicines. And I will introduce to all of you one by one independently, simply. The first prescription I want to introduce to all of you is the Qingfei Paidu decoction. And in this slide, we can see a familiar picture that I've introduced to all of you at the beginning of my presentation. And in this picture, we can see ancient traditional Chinese medicine classics written in the East Han Dynasty with the history more than 2,000 years. In these books, it collected many famous prescriptions of traditional Chinese medicine to be used to treat the epidemics at that time. And since time came to 2020, the traditional Chinese medicine physicians started to search the ancient experience and in this and we firstly focus on these books, and we choose the 4 famous prescriptions written in these ancient books, which are the Ma Xing Shi Gan Tang, the second one is Shi Gan Ma Huang Tang, the third one is Xiao Chai Hu Tang, the fourth one is Wu Ling San. So based on these 4 prescriptions, we invent a new prescription, which is the Qingfei Paidu decoction I have introduced in these slides. And this decoction is the first prescription issued by the China National Administration of Traditional Chinese Medicine to the whole society, and which is suitable for mild, moderate, severe, and critical cases. And in this slides, I have just listed the herbs are used in this script, which is used in the prescriptions with the doses and the quantities. And if there is the traditional Chinese herbal pharmacy in your country, and you'd like to, you want to try the traditional Chinese medicine way to prevent or treat the confirmed cases, and perhaps you can follow the prescription I have listed in this slides. And for each production of traditional Chinese medicine, I provide many research information in these slides. The aim of this work is to just use another language to explain the efficiency and the safety of the traditional Chinese medicine. We just use the medicine way, the Western medicine way language to describe the mechanism of traditional Chinese medicine. For example, we use the clinical efficiency research data and the RCT trials, which is the randomized, double-blind, controlled, and clinical trials, the result to show the efficiency and the safety of the production of traditional Chinese medicine. And the aim is to help all the friends to have the confidence in the traditional Chinese medicine because it's described in different languages. But considering the background of all the participants online for these seminars, I will just lift this information here and did not explain detail to all of you. If someone have the self-interest, you can review this information by yourself and after my presentation and after lectures. And the second production I want to introduce to all of you is Hua Shi Bai Du formula. And this formula, when we review the invention history, we will find that we just search from the ancient experience in a book named Wen Yi Lun. It was written in the Ming Dynasty with history about 1,000 years. And from this ancient experience, we just invent the Hua Shi Bai Du formula as a new prescription. And this formula is based on the prescription recommended by the National Diagnosis and Treatment Protocol and be optimized by the medical teams of Xi'an Hospital of China Academy of Chinese Medical Sciences in Wuhan City when they work in there. And it's also suitable for mild and moderate and severe and critical types. It's also be granted in the diagnosis and the treatment guidance of the COVID-19 issued by the Ministry of Health of China. And I also list the herbs with the doses and the quantities in these slides. And this is some information about clinical research data of Hua Shi Bai Du formula. And from this information, we can find the phenomenon that for many foreign friends, they just believe that the traditional Chinese medicine or the traditional medicine production only have the function of as food, nutrition supplement, or the prevention of some chronic disease. However, from this information in this slide, you can see that at the beginning of 2020, when the outbreak of COVID-19 occurred in China, the traditional Chinese medicine firstly to be used on the severe patients. It means that it has the function to treat the emergency situation of the patients. Of course, at the same time, we checked, evaluate the efficiency on the mild and the moderate patients. And we have finally found the definitely effect on the mild and moderate cases. And many patients are afraid that the using the of the traditional Chinese medicine will have this side effect on the liver and the kidney, and we did many long-term follow-up research. We found that the liver and the kidney function were traced in the test, and no drug-related adverse reaction were found. So during the past 2 years, many productions of traditional Chinese medicine become a more famous production, and I believe that among them, Lianhua Qinwen capsule should be one of the most important representative. And actually speaking, this capsule is not special for COVID-19. When we review the invention history of this granule, we could trace back to the year of 2003. At that year, we also found a serious epidemic called named SARS. We also used the traditional integration of traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine. And after the fighting against SARS, we just make this prescription as a new production of traditional Chinese medicine, which is the Lianhua Qinwen capsules in this slice. And when the time came to 2020, we started to try to use these kind of capsules on the mild and the moderate cases. And we finally found the definitely effect on mild and moderate cases, this capsules is more suitable for patients with severe fever and dry stool. And this is some research status about the Lianhua Qinwen capsules to be used on the mild and moderate cases. Another production I'd like to introduce to all of you is Jinhua Qinggan granules. The same as the Lianhua Qinwen capsules, this granules is not special for COVID-19 either. And when we review the invention history of these granules, we could trace back to the year of 2009. At that year, we fought against H1N1 influenza epidemic, and we also used the integration of traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine as a main protocol of treatment. And after that, the prescription we used on H1N1 influenza became a new production of traditional Chinese medicine, which is the Jinhua Qinggan granules. And this granules is more suitable for patients with mild fever and a severe headache. And this is some research information about Jinhua Qinggan granules on mild and moderate cases. If someone carefully about the prescription I have used in this slides, in the presentation, you will find there is a frequently appearance of the natural herbs named Amphotericin. And I know that many governments have strictly control about this kind of natural herbs named Amphotericin because they know there's a content named amphotericin inside of the amphotericin. And the amphotericin is a material to make up some illegal drugs and has the side effect of addiction. So many governments are afraid that if we widely use the amphotericin, will cause the same side effect. Actually speaking, what I want to say that the commonly used clinical quantity of amphotericin will not cause the side effects such as the rapid heartbeat, the increase in blood pressure, addiction, and etc. The reason is that the amount of the amphotericin existing in the amphotericin is low. If we want to make the amount in our body of the amphotericin to be efficiently amount by oral taking of the natural amphotericin, the amount of the amphotericin somebody to be oral taking is a large amount that not ordinary people can take. So that's the reason I say the commonly used quantity of the amphotericin is very safe and will not cause the side effect of the amphotericin. When we talk about the advantage of traditional Chinese medicine in treating mild and moderate cases, especially in the period of the first half year of 2020, and we'd like to use the compared ways. We like to compare with the average level of the world. So according to the statistics of the World Health Organization, about 6% to 10% of patients with mild fever, with mild symptoms will become severe. And at that time, the most patients who are the mild and moderate cases were admitted in the field hospital, or also known as the Nobel Camping Hospital. And we widely use the traditional Chinese medicine in those kind of hospitals, especially on the mild and moderate cases. And the overall conversion rate to severe cases was only 2% to 5%. So this data is only half of the average level of the world. So this data can only show the important advantage, obviously advantage of traditional Chinese medicine in treating mild and moderate cases. And just now we have passed many information about the clinical trials and the efficiency research. And now I'd like to emphasize on the clinical trial and to introduce to all of you. Compared with the past information, this clinical trial is the unique one because it's the first clinical trial to use the traditional Chinese medicine production special for COVID-19 and conducted overseas, not in China. And in this trial, we enrolled 251 confirmed cases, and the minimum age is 23 years old, the maximum age is 58 years old, and the average age is 44.7 years old. And all of them are asymptomatic, mild and moderate cases, and we did not enroll the severe and critical types. And when they enrolled to the trial and admitted to the hospital, they appeared many different symptoms. For example, the cough or pains, shortness of breath, diarrhea, fatigue, etc. And some of the patients have the chronic disease. It means that when we confirm the symptoms of the COVID-19, we should also concern about the symptoms that are caused by these chronic disease that patients have. Let's review the timeline of this clinical trial and to check the result of this trial. And this trial started on the date of the April 29th. At that date, 251 confirmed cases were enrolled to the trial, and we started the treatment for this kind of patients. And firstly, thanks for the strong support of the Ministry of Health of that country. They permit us to only use the traditional Chinese medicine way to treat this kind of patients. And the first milestone event appeared on the date of the May 11. It's only 12 days after the starting of this trial. And at that date, 121 confirmed cases were discharged from the hospital. It's accounting for almost 50% of the total samples. And when did the last patient discharged from the hospital? The patients discharged from the hospital on the date of the May 28th. Until the May 28th, the total 251 confirmed cases were discharged from the hospital, and no one died and no one converted to severe type. And when we checked the viral ACE conversion time, we will find that the minimum time is 4 days, and the max time is 29 days, and the medium time was on the level of 6 days. Some friends will say that this time is not short enough because on the current situation, many patients could be cured or be negative in such a short time, perhaps less than 10 days, less than 7 days, or just in 5 days. However, we should remember this trial was conducted in the first half year of 2020. And before the research team arrived at that country, the conversion time in other countries was more than 1 month. And so, the Ministry of Health was so satisfied with the result of this trial. So they just gave an emergency permission of this, permission to have a registrate of this production as legal drugs to treat confirmed cases in the other country. And this production is Hua Shibaidu formula, and it's the year of 2020. In 2021, this production had been registered in another country named Cambodia we are working in. So just have introduced that I got a medical team from China to work in Cambodia and on clinic. And when we treat confirmed cases, the main production we used to treat this kind of patients are the 化失败毒 formula. All right, let's continue to talk about this symptoms improvement situation during this trial. And from this form, we can see that the COVID-19 patients have many typical symptoms, and it's more than the typical symptoms of this influenza, and which is the first reason I see the COVID-19 is not a special influenza, because we can see more typical symptoms that appear on the confirmed cases of COVID-19. And we evaluate this kind of symptoms for 2 times. The first time is when the patients who are admitted to the hospital, and the second time is when they discharge from the hospital. If the score is higher, it means the condition of the symptoms more serious. So firstly, from the trends of the reducing of the scores, we can have the first conclusion that all the symptoms improved significantly during this trial. However, among those symptoms, there are 2 symptoms caught my attention. The first one is fever. Another one is the first one is fever on the first line, and the second one is vomiting on the last line. Why those 2 symptoms caught my attention? You can see from the result of the scores. When the patients who are discharged from the hospital, and among the scores, only those 2 symptoms got a score of 0 or nearly 0. 0 or nearly 0 means at that time those symptoms were disappeared. But however, on the other hand, how about the other symptoms? We can see from the result of scores, we will find that even the patients were discharged from the hospital, the symptoms, the most symptoms, will still exist in the patient's body. And that is we call it sequelae. So that is the second reason I say the COVID-19 is not a special influenza, because we can see many sequelae exist in the patient's body after they were discharged from the hospital. Many friends are wondering one question: when and how long will this sequelae exist in the patient's body? And according to many long-term follow-up research, we can tell you the answers that many symptoms will exist in the patient's body for about 3 or 4 weeks. And some of the symptoms, for example, disorder of the smelling and tasting, will exist in the patient's body for about half a year. So that's the third reason I say that the COVID-19 is not a special influenza, because the sequelae is more serious than the COVID-19, than the influenza. So based on the 3 reasons, I'd like to ask all friends to change your mind, to say that, to find that the COVID-19 has not become a special influenza until now, and we need to pay much more attention to this kind of disease and to protect ourselves better, since we have stayed with the pandemic for a long time, and it seems that we are familiar about this kind of disease, but actually speaking, there's many unknown things about this disease for us, and we cannot easy to imagine what will happen in the future. All right, the third session and the last session, I'd like to introduce some information about 2 medical teams. The first, shower. The first national level, the first team is the first national level traditional Chinese medicine medical teams sent by Xinyuan Hospital to Wuhan City for medical aid. And the second is the first national level traditional Chinese medicine medical team, also sent by Xinyuan Hospital to foreign countries. We should say that the period of the Wuhan fighting against COVID-19 in Wuhan city is the most serious and the worst time in fighting against COVID-19's history. Why we see that? It doesn't mean that after the period in Wuhan city, we did not meet the more larger scale about the confirmed cases and the more large area that we have been suffering from the COVID-19 epidemic. Just because in Wuhan city, we are the first time to fight against COVID-19, and this epidemic did not let us have the time to have the fully preparation for this kind of patients, for this kind of epidemics. So that's the reason. And we at that time we are lack of almost everything. I just remember we lack of the mask, we lack of the white coat, and even we lack of the alcohol, which is the basic disinfectant material. However, the epidemic did not give us time to wait, so we just continue. We just rush to Wuhan city, just carry some basic material to fight against COVID-19. These pictures just show the whole process of the medical teams from Xi'an Hospital to Wuhan city for medical aid, including the departure, the working in Wuhan city, and the running back home, and returning back home. And in this slide, I'd like to introduce one data to all of you, which is the January 23, 2020. Each country have their own most important festivals, and many countries celebrate New Year's, many countries celebrate Christmas Day. And if you have any knowledge about the traditional Chinese culture, you will know that the Spring Festival, we also call it the Chinese New Year, is the most important festival for the Chinese. And according to the Chinese custom, no matter how far you are away from your home, during this kind of holiday, you should go back your home to reunion with your family, to celebrate with your family, to celebrate these festivals. And the January 23, 2020 was the last working day before the Spring Festival holiday. It means that at that date, many Chinese were on the way back home or were going to on the way back home. However, according to the condition of the epidemic of COVID-19, the Chinese government make a difficult decision to lock down a megacity named Wuhan. Wuhan is a megacity with a population more than 12 million. Nowadays, many countries follow the Chinese experience to use locking down policy to stop the spreading of the virus. Perhaps they can lock down one community, lock down one city, or even lock down the entire country. However, when we trace back to the beginning of 2020, and we suddenly heard that the Chinese government locked down a megacity with the population more than 12 million, did all of us really understand and support to this kind of policies? Wuhan city had been locked down for 76 days. The period of 76 days is the most important for the fight against COVID-19, just because we used this period to let the virus just kept in the special area in Wuhan city and did not spreading among the whole China based on the 1.4 billion population. And we did not lose the control of this kind of virus. Otherwise, there would be a disaster to Wuhan city, to whole China, and even to the whole world. We often use a sentence to summarize the period of 76 locking down policy being issued in Wuhan city. We locked down one city, however, we safeguard the whole country. It is the great sacrifice from Wuhan to the whole China, and I believe that it's a great contribution from China to the whole world. Our medical team entering Wuhan just 2 days after the locking down policy had been issued, and we entering a hospital named Jinyingtan. And before 2020, I believe that none of us or less of us know this hospital's name and the concern about the situation about the hospital. But after 2020, more and more friends concerned about the situation in this hospital, because Jinyingtan Hospital is the designated infectious disease treatment hospital in Wuhan city. It means that if there is a new confirmed cases, and if the patients just confirmed conversion to severe, and they should be delivered or transferred to Jingyitan Hospital at once. So Jingyitan Hospital was under the heaviest stress of the epidemic in Wuhan City at that time. And this is the hospital we entered in, and we took charge of the intensive care unit department. In the ICU department, the totally confirmed cases are the severe and critical type, and most of them are the elderly and the weak patients. At the beginning, we tried all the antivirus drugs, all the antibiotic drugs, but those drugs did not work on those kind of patients. So every day we just see the patients pass away. In the first week, we entering Wuhan, we set up the mechanism of the integration of traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine, which just reduced the mortality rate of the confirmed cases. And this help us to set up the solid confidence in fight against COVID-19. Even we did not know more about this kind of virus, but if we found some way to save the patient's life, that's enough for us to set up the confidence in fighting against COVID-19 at that time. When we summarize the experience from China in prevention and the treat this kind of disease, I believe that the mobile community hospital construction will be most important one, because it will help us to admit all the confirmed cases into the hospital and obtain the dynamic clearing zero result in the community and stop the spreading of the virus in the community. And the totally beds offered the mobile community hospital in Wuhan City at the time reached to 50,000 beds. That's the capability we can admit all the confirmed cases into the hospital. The primary hospital is also an important part of this prevention system of the COVID-19. And since more and more patients coming to the primary hospital, and our medical team in Wuhan City offer the medical services to the patients in the primary hospital. And I have introduced that the Chinese government organized many medical teams from the other provinces and cities in the beginning of 2020 to come to Wuhan for medical aid, of course, including the Xi'an Hospital's medical team. And the total medical staff from the other province have been reached to 45,000. And the 45,000 the medical staffs from the other province combined with the local staffs to set up the solid frontier against COVID-19. And thanks for their hardest work, we can control this kind of epidemic in such a short time. And when time came to 2022, there's a new wave epidemic, especially the Omicron occurred in Cambodia. And replying to the emergency invitation from the Ministry of Health of Cambodia, Chinese government sent out the first national level traditional Chinese medicine medical team to Cambodia to help this country to fight against COVID-19. And I'm proud of that. I'm going to be one of the member of these medical teams. The task for us as followed. The first task is to offer the high quality traditional Chinese medicine medical services to the local patients. And the second is to promote the capacity of the prevention and the treatment to COVID-19 in Cambodia. And the third is to enhance the understanding of traditional Chinese medicine in Cambodia. And we set up the traditional Chinese medicine clinic in a national level general hospital in the capital of the Cambodia, Phnom Penh city. It is in the Cosmo Hospital, and it's on the date of the March 21st, 2022. And that date, the Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen visits our department and spoke highly of the anti-epidemic work of traditional Chinese medicine. And besides the medical services, we believe that if we want to promote the consensus between the two sides of the Cambodia and China, we should offer the more training courses and conduct joint research with the research fellowship and the medical staffs in Cambodia. So there's some working sense about the training courses, on-site training courses in Cambodia, organized by Xi'an Hospital and our medical team. And if we want to create a new safety environment in our clinic, we should have special manners. For example, all personnel can enter in the clinic only after they have been disinfected. And we just designed an app for appointments for the visiting to doctors. So the patient should make appointments before visiting the doctors. And if the patients have the typical symptoms, we will offer the rapid test to them. If the result is negative, it's okay to see the doctors. Otherwise, and doctors will go to a special area to offer the diagnosis and the treatment for those kind of patients. All right, we still have some time, which I'd like to reply to the questions that asked by the friends online. So only one question is recommend to use a medical mask to prevent the transmission of COVID-19. And I believe that according to the condition and the knowledge about the 2 years, we suggest all the publics to wear the mask when we entering some strange area or we entering the inside the indoor area, and that's where we not only protect yourself but also protect the others. So please wear the mask when you go to the public area. Thank you. All right, is there any questions? Or we are going to the end of my lectures, and the last I will share these contact ways to all of you. And if you have any more questions, you can feel free to contact with me. And this is my contact, my name, my Chinese mobile phone. If you use the WeChat, it's the communication app, similar to the Facebook, the Telegram, and the Skype, something like this. And if you use the WeChat, you can search my mobile phone number in this app, and you can add me, and we can continue to talk on this app. Or you can send an email to me. And at the same time, you can send your questions to the organizer of the seminars, and they will forward to me, and I will reply to your questions as soon as possible. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Xu, so much for your very detailed introduction about Chinese medicine and the role of traditional Chinese medicine against COVID-19 and all the other efforts that we have been making against the fighting against the COVID-19. I'm sure that this information are very helpful to all the participants here. And due to time limits, we are running a little. We're just running right. And then just as Dr. Xu said, if anybody has any question regarding Dr. Xu's presentation, please feel free to contact him in the ways that he just shared with you. And you are also very welcome to share with us your question, and we will make sure you get an answer from Dr. Xu. So yeah, maybe we just wait for like 1 minute to see if anybody has any question.
I heard that some participants are from Cambodia. So if you have time, please, I'd like to invite all the friends in Cambodia to visit our department. Our department is located in the Cosmo Hospital, the Losang Hospital, and it's very near to the capital of the Phnom Penh city. And if you have time, please to have time to visit our department. Thank you.主持人老师他们
对 sorry 我们刚网有点问题 So if no more questions, that's quite the end of the day. Okay, thank you, Dr. Xu, so much. Yeah, thank you. And then thank you, Dr. Xu, and for all the other participants. Our Chinese lesson